From Washington, D.C. to the heart of America, welcome to Mark Alford's America. I'm freshman congressman from Missouri, Mark Alford, and I believe in America. I believe in you. And most importantly, I believe that our greatest days are still ahead. You know, each week we take you behind the scenes to share the stories, the news, the legislation, and meet the great folks that I get the honor of working with each and every day. Today, we are talking with Congressman Don Bacon. Congressman Bacon grew up on a farm in Illinois. He learned firsthand how the value of hard work and commitment contributes to the success of a small business. In the Air Force, he specialized in electronic warfare, intelligence, and reconnaissance. He completed 2 tours as Wing Commander, Group Command, Squadron Command, and much, much more. In total, General Bacon served 16 assignments and 4 deployments, including Operation Iraqi Freedom in 2007 and 2008. He holds the Air Force Distinguished Service Medal, 2 Bronze Stars, 2 Legion of Merits, 5 Meritorious Service Medals, and the Aerial Achievement Medal. So much more. Today, we are in his office. General Bacon, good to see you.
Mark, thank you. And you do a great job. I can see why you were the superstar anchorman.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And to top that off, in Anchorman, they have scotch. We're having a little scotch in your office.
That's to loosen us up.
Yeah, it's after hours. So, hey, I've really gotten to like you on the arms. We're on armed services
Likewise.
Together. We're on AG together, and I just want to get your thoughts about where we are in America right now. We have conflicts in Israel. We have conflicts in Ukraine. We have Xi Jinping ready to take over Taiwan. Some generals are saying by 2027. What is your general assessment about what is going on in our world right now, and how did we get here?
Well, firstly, I look at America itself. We live in the greatest country in the world. Our freedoms, the land of opportunity. But yet, I don't think most Americans realize it. They're so angry right now with all the cable, TV, and the various social media that you read, and there people are getting just angry by what they're reading. And yet, we're the beacon of freedom. We're the indispensable nation for freedom. And when you look out in the world, we're back to the most dangerous times that we had 30, 40 years ago during the Cold War. Now, in 1990, we had the peace dividend, Berlin Wall fell, the Kremlin fell, the Soviet Union, we got Russia out of that. We thought we had peace in our time, quoting Chamberlain, so we thought. But I think we're back now where we got Russia, this unprovoked, barbaric invasion of Ukraine. You have China building a nuclear inventory to match ours, threatening Taiwan. They're suppressing the Tibetans, suppressing the Uyghurs. Could go on and on there. Then we have Iran, that wants to be a regional hegemon in the Middle East. Just attacked Israel with 330 munitions. The world is dangerous, and I think America has to catch up. We fought 20 years of counterinsurgency, but now we have to be ready for a near-peer competitor in a conventional fight. 2 different kind of fights. I think we're behind.
How are we behind?
Well, we spent 20 years doing counterinsurgency, so we worked a lot on drones and all these things that you do in counterinsurgency. We didn't invest in stealth technology as much as we should have, or produce F-35s as fast, enough F-22s, enough B-2s, and we're going to B-21.
Which is coming to Whiteman Air Force
Base. So we have 3 legs of the triad. We have a 60-year-old bomber, a 50-year-old intercontinental ballistic missile. We have 30-year-old submarines. We have to replace all of them right now. And that's a lot of money. That if we would have done this over 20 years, it wouldn't be so bad. So we have catching up to do.
Well, in case in point of what's happening right now, Iran sending 30,000 drones in to bomb Israel, and we're having to use $1 million missiles to take them out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's taking down our supply and our stock in case we need it. So how do we combat that? How do we come up with new systems that are going to combat these terrorists, basically?
So you're right. They fired 330 ballistic missiles, drones, and cruise missiles. Some of them were low cost, and we were firing SM-1s, 2s, and 3s. The Israelis are firing Arrow missiles, but also as it got closer, Iron Dome. So the amount of money that we were using to intercept, but yet each one of those saved potentially lives on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't want to underestimate the value of that. But there's new technology the Israelis and Americans are working on, laser technology, that would be different. We'd be able to shoot this stuff down, and they're getting pretty close. So the Israelis have been the lead on it, but we've been assisting. So there is some, I think, more affordable systems coming down the pike. And but I think it's a tribute to America, Israel, Great Britain, and also France and Jordan. So other countries pitched in. that we had a 99% kill rate on this massive attack on Israel.
Why is it important that we support Israel?
Well, I have a spiritual reason. Those who bless Israel will be blessed. I believe that right out of Genesis. I believe that's God's promise. I believe it's a moral reason that for 2,000 plus years, the Jewish people were persecuted. Of course, we had the Holocaust. It wasn't just the Holocaust. It happened all over the world where the Jews are being persecuted. So Israel's a safe haven for Jews all over the world that need a safe haven. I think there's practical reasons. So the only democracy in the Middle East. They're our best friends in the Middle East. It's a win-win relationship. So just on a pragmatic line, it's good that we're friends with Israel because we benefit too. But I think there's moral and spiritual reasons as well.
Of course, the case with Ukraine is a little bit different. I know you support Ukraine. You were in the 117th Congress, which authorized and appropriated $67.5 billion, I think, for direct military assistance. They're just about out of money. By the time that this taping airs on our stations here in Missouri, we will have voted on, I think, a supplemental for Ukraine and a separate supplemental for Israel. What are your feelings on Ukraine?
It's in our national security interest that Ukraine remain independent. So, again, Putin did an unprovoked, barbaric, unjust invasion. They've kidnapped approximately 20,000 kids and dispersed them throughout Russia. Their behavior is like Hamas when they come into an area that they occupied. Ukraine wanted to be pro-West. They've wanted to be free market. They want to be part of the EU. Russia didn't want to let that happen. So I could go through the whole history of Ukraine, Russia. Bottom line is Ukraine wants to be independent. They want to go the Western route. Russia doesn't want to allow them to do that. They don't even see Ukraine as independent people. They think they're part of Russia. But from my vantage point, we stand up to bad guys, bullies. And Putin's a bully, invading a country one-fourth its size. So one, I think we have a moral argument to help them with weapons. They're doing the fighting. But if Putin is in Kyiv, say in December, the very next country to follow will be Moldova. Now, you can just take that to the bank. I put that in the almost one-to-one category of assuredness. They're also calling the Baltic states renegade states or fake states. I've heard both. And they're threatening the Latvian prime minister, the Estonian prime minister. And I wouldn't put it past them to try to take these Baltic states, who they think, the Russians think, really belongs to Russia because they were part of Russia ever since World War II, and they want to reclaim those territories. If you don't stand up to a bully, they're going to keep pushing you around. I think this is the time to stand up to them right now.
Don't Americans deserve answers, though, as to what victory looks like? We have been pressing Zelensky in this administration. The Speaker of the House sent a letter specifically asking Jake Sullivan and the President specific questions. What does victory look like? How long are we in this for? And how much is it going to cost the American taxpayers?
Well, Russia has a big vote in this, and they're an independent nation. They're the adversary. And it's hard to define what their will is going to be. They fought in Afghanistan for about less than a decade, but just a little less than a decade before they said, okay, it's not worth it. So they have a vote in this, and it's hard to judge what Russia's willpower is. If you read Clausewitz, War is a Battle of Wills, I don't know how much Russia's will is on this. So it's hard to define.
But victory for Zelensky, what does that look? Is it taking back Donbass, Crimea, going back to the pre-1991 borders?
You know, we signed an agreement in the 90s that the borders were what they were, and then Russia violated it. And so I don't know what – I think if I was Zelensky, I wouldn't admit that I was going to give up any terrain right now because that's just a victory for Russia. But I do think at some point they're going to have to sit down at the table and figure out what those lines are going to be. It may be loss of Crimea. That's really between Russia and Ukraine. But I do know this: Russia's bombing Ukraine, Kyiv every night. They're bombing Kharkiv. They're bombing cities, and they're the ones who are the aggressors here. If this happened to America and Mexico or Canada invaded and they had 2 or 3 states under control, do we feel like we should force us to cede that territory? It wasn't Ukraine didn't do anything. It was all Russia. I just find it more complicated than, in the end, Ukraine's going to have to negotiate with Russia, and they're going to have to agree on some kind of settlement. And it's really between those two. Right now, though, Russia is the invader and Ukraine's the innocent victim. And I think we stand by them.
Real quick, would this have happened had President Trump still been in office?
Well, it didn't. In fact, none of these things occurred. We didn't see Afghanistan collapse. We didn't see Hamas do these attacks on Israel. We didn't see Russia invade Ukraine. Actually, Crimea was invaded under President Obama, right? So I would say probably not. I think people don't know how President Trump would respond, which creates a little fear.
Hey, listen, folks, we're going to be right back. When we come back, a very important segment on the Quality of Life panel. General Bacon led this panel. I was on it under the auspices of the Armed Services Committee, and we are trying to make life better for our men and women who are serving our great nation. You're going to hear more about the recommendations, a huge pay raise for the military coming up. You'll want to stay tuned for that. Stay with us. You're listening to Mark Alford's America. Welcome back to Mark Alford's America, where we give you a behind-the-scenes look at Washington, D.C., and let you meet some of the folks I'm working with to help shape our great nation. Today, we're talking with the Congressman Don Bacon, a general in the Air Force, a brigadier general, right?
Air power.
Air power.
Air general.
What was your favorite part about being in the Air Force?
I loved command the best. I got to command 2 squadrons, which was about 300 people. It varied one squadron to the other, but roughly 300. I got to be a group commander of 5 squadrons. And I was a wing commander of 31 squadrons, and I was a 2-time wing commander. So I love command. I love people. And I love being on teams where you're trying to determine what the goals, what the mission is. And it's so much fun as a team achieving mission success and watching, and in one case, 8,000 people do great things and feel like you're part of this great team. And that was my favorite part of the Air Force.
What part of that excitement and enthusiasm translated in what you did leading our Quality of Life panel?
I did do almost 30 years in the military. I was, squadron commanders are where the rubber hits the road for command. You command E1s through E05s when you're a squadron commander, and you get to know people and you see the struggles. And so when you hear that roughly 1 out of 8 of our enlisted forces or folks are reliant on food banks or SNAP, it bothers me, right? 1 out of 8. That's roughly what we heard. And then you find out barracks were getting failing grades from the GAO, and I don't want my 18-year-old sons or daughters going into failing barracks, having to maybe rely on food stamps or food banks to put food on the table. So we knew we had a problem, and it was so much fun to be part of a team. So, okay, what do we need to do to fix this? And first of all, what is the scope of the problem, and how do we fix it? And we had a great team, and you were a great part of it. You were always uplifting. You were an encourager to the whole team, but the whole team was good. There weren't
bipartisan.
There weren't Democrats or Republicans there. We were a single team getting the job done.
As I said in our news conference last week, and it was said many times on our panel, that this is not a red issue nor blue issue. It's a red, white, and blue issue, because this is about recruitment and retention. We've got an issue right now in the Department of Defense, military forces, where young people, only 9% of young people have any interest in joining the military right now. And if we can't retain the good people who are there, we're going to have real issues when it comes to confronting communist China.
We have a 50-year experiment with an all-volunteer force, and we've recruited America's best in the military. People want to serve. They're fired up to serve our country. They're patriotic. They're selfless. And we've been blessed. We have saw what our all-volunteer force can do, but it's under strain right now, as you say, with a 9% interest. Fact is, about 25% of our 18-year-olds are physically fit to get in. I mean, there's almost 3/4 of our 18-year-olds are not physically able to get in the military, which is alarming. I think it's a national emergency for us to figure out what are we doing better, what should we be doing better in our schools. And I used to play outside all day when I was a kid, and we don't see a lot of that going on as much, right? I had 3 TV channels growing up,
right?
And during the afternoon, it was all soap operas. So you had to go outside and play.
You weren't hooked on the soap operas.
I didn't like as the day turns, or whatever the name of the thing was, guiding light.
So one of the things, General, we're going to do is we're going to give the lower enlisted E1 through E4 a 15% pay hike.
Right.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, we want to do it to get them over the threshold so they didn't have to rely on SNAP, or take the pressure off. Putting food on the table. I don't have to go to a food bank. So 15% pay raise for E1 through E4, a targeted pay raise. And then my main concern was, if you go from E4 to E5, there still has to be a pay raise there, right? And so we're able to accommodate that as well. That's the highlight. We're also taking housing allowance. So since 2016, we subtracted 5% of people's pay allowance and put that money at other places in the budget. I thought it was wrong. So if you're underpaid, now 5% of your housing allowance is being subtracted, and then your spouse can't get a job. The number one demographic in our country for unemployment as military spouses. You put all that together on one person, they're struggling. And so we wanted to address all those things.
Housing, pay, ensuring access to medical care. Tell me about that.
Well, we found there's a lot of folks for specialty care are having to wait 2 months to get specialty care. It's not right. But this is not just a problem for the military. This is a national issue right now, which makes it harder. It's one thing when it's a military-only problem, then it's easier to fix. But when it's a national issue, there's more challenges because it's not just the military. We're having this all over our communities, coast to coast. So some of the things we focused on there is a little more research, what kind of specialist that we got to bring in, but also more reliance on telehealth and things like that. So if we can get someone to care through telehealth for some kinds of health problems, that speeds up the process.
And then enhancing support for military spouses. A lot of times when families move from one base to another, maybe one state to another, their professional licenses that the spouse is holding to do business, it's not recognized. What are we going to do about that?
Well, we're going to expand the compact and work more on getting more states to the table on this, because not all the states are part of this. And so we want, and it doesn't necessarily work for every specialty or professionalism. I get that. But as much as we can, we should honor the license for a spouse. If they come from Alabama to Nebraska or to Missouri, we want to try to make that as much as we can. But on top of that, we have a pilot program with the Chamber of Commerce. With the Chamber will help get our spouses employed when they show up. We want to expand that. I think there's some opportunities there. But again, it's a hard issue. It's not as easy, but where there's a few things that we're looking at.
And a lot of military families have children. Like any other family in America, families are struggling for adequate, affordable child care. What are we doing about that?
I'm trying to remember the exact numbers, but during COVID, we were about 63% manned in our child cares. So in other words, we could only go like 63% occupancy for child care. Now we're in the mid-80s. So we're not out of the woods yet, but we made some progress. But what we got to do is ensure that we are fully hired for the workers there. So what we want to do is say, hey, if you're a worker at the child care, your first child is absolutely going to get free child care at that child care center. And then we want to encourage the services to do it also for the second and third child, though we didn't mandate it. And so that's one of the things we're trying to do there. I'm also looking at some separate legislation. It may not be part of this proposal, but I want to give incentives for people to work on base. I'd like to submit a bill for if you work at the child care on base that you get access to BX or commissary. So there's different things we can try to do, but the main goal is to get the on-base child care 100% full with workers. Secondly, if you live off base, we want to allow spouses to use off-base child care and offset that cost when they're out job hunting. So we're investing in some of those programs as well.
A lot packed in this quality of life panel. I forgot how many changes are going to be made. It's in the dozens. This is just a start, though, right? I think our chairman, Rogers, has really declared that the whole National Defense Authorization Act, the focus this year, and we pass it every year, the focus this year is really quality of life.
It's going to be the cornerstone of this year's NDAA. And it's going to cost a little money, but we need it for our all-volunteer force. And if we want to keep our all-volunteer force strong, this is what we got to do. But I appreciate Chairman Rogers has made this his number one priority. And as I mentioned at our press conference, I've been a 5-time commander. When your commander finds your mission the most important, that's a good thing. Because that means you're going to get some success, you get some work done, you can make some impact.
General Bacon, what do you love about America?
Well, our freedoms are number one. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech. I love our history. I love reading about Abraham Lincoln, Eisenhower, Grant, Washington. But it's our freedom. Secondly, we're the land of opportunity. If you have good character and you work hard, you can climb the ladder of success here.
Meritocracy.
Yep, and that's all you ever want. If you work hard and you're a good person, you got good character, good things can happen.
That's a good reason to sign up for the military, too. I had the opportunity today to tell a young man named Cody that he was headed to Annapolis to the Naval Academy, one of the great honors that we have as congressmen and women to make these appointments to military academy. And these people's lives are changed forever.
Yep. It is the highlight. And then when you meet them when they graduate,
Yeah.
and you're gonna get to know the families. I go to the Air Force Academy, and I'm on the Air Force board, so I have lunch or dinner with those that I've nominated. It's a lot of fun.
General, thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us for Mark Alford's America. We'll talk again next week. Until then, remember, I believe in you. I believe that our best days are still ahead of us. And General Bacon, I believe in America.